Welcome back to Old School Sports and our Out of the Park Baseball 23 playthrough of the Pittsburgh Pirates. And we are at the start of the 2048 playoffs, and perhaps somewhat surprisingly, the Pirates are back in the playoffs for an eighth consecutive year. We had a losing record as late as late August, but we really turned things around over the final month and a half of the season to finish at 85 and 77, 3 games up on the Atlanta Braves for the final National League wild card. So the fact that we are back in the postseason is very positive, and right now we're ranked 5th in the major leagues in the latest power rankings. As I mentioned, we've been playing our best baseball of the year recently, which gives us a little bit of optimism. You can see we had our 2 best months of the year in September and August with 650 and 620 winning percentages. So that's the positive. We are playing our best baseball of the year right now. That said, we still finished tied for 13th in the National League in runs scored and 7th in runs allowed. So we're a middling pitching staff and a poor offense. And our Pythagorean record was 78 and 84. So none of that suggests that it's going to be a long run in the playoffs for these Pirates, but we are at least here. I'm going to have to win on the road. 3-game series coming up, but and it's going to be against Cincinnati, our division champion. But we've got the rotation set the way that we want it. Even though we're going to be on the road for all 3 of those games, we're at least going to be putting the pitchers out there that we want to in a big spot. And right now, as we think about our playoff roster, we've got 13 pitchers on the roster. Certainly not going to go with that. So it comes down basically to 2 of our guys who were in the rotation much of the year and largely disappointing. The right-hander Sal Valadez, 8 and 18 with a 6.33 ERA. And the left-hander Mike Wright, 8 and 8 with a 5.62 ERA. Which one of those players isn't going to make the squad? And I think we're going to send or take Valadez off of the playoff roster to open up a spot for another position player. Basically just like Wright, because it gives us a third lefty out of the pen. Although technically, if it's only a 3-game series, I think that'll mean that Xavier Rabb ends up in the pen also when we switch to a 3-man rotation. But a lot of options for manager Jan Vasquez with 3 or 4 lefties and 5 righties in the bullpen. So Valadez, after a real disappointing year, is going to be missing the playoff roster, which probably would not have anticipated at the beginning of the season. Not that we were guaranteed the playoffs this year by any stretch of the imagination, but he also did just pitch in our last game of the year, a 15-0 loss to the Cubs, as we were kind of saving the pitchers who were going to be going in the playoffs. So he's also kind of worked harder than anybody recently. That's going to allow us to move the versatile youngster Jaden Godfrey back onto the roster. Can see he can play first, second, third, left, center, or right. Hit only .228 this year with no home runs, but does have the speed, can be a pinch runner, guy who can bunt for us, and in theory is a decent contact hitter. Just doesn't have much power and the best eye in the world, but is a player coming off the bench, giving us a little bit of defensive versatility and potentially a defensive substitute, and as I said, a pinch runner. Think that there could be a spot or 2 in the playoffs where having him on the roster could give our manager some optionality that's useful to him. And as we do set ourselves up with the three-man bullpen or three-man rotation, Street, Arroyo, and Smith for the 3-game series at Cincinnati, that will move the lefty Rab, who was our trade deadline acquisition, did pretty well for us as a starter, 5-3, 3.39 ERA. Move him into a key setup role for us, and as I talked about, that gives us 4 lefties and 5 righties in the bullpen. So a lot of options for manager Jan Vasquez to hopefully work some magic here at Cincinnati and then hopefully beyond Cincinnati in the playoffs. And we are ready to begin our series against the Cincinnati Reds. As I mentioned, they won the division this year, 12 games ahead of us with a 97-65 record. Unfortunately for the Reds, though, the Mets won 98 and the Giants won 100. 3 best teams in baseball in the National League this year, so the Reds have to play a first-round series. We're in the playoffs. We got a chance. It's time to see what happens. As I mentioned, we did end up clinching the playoff spot early enough to get our rotation set the way we want it. So we've got our ace, Sean Street, on the mound today. Did spend some time on the IL over the summer, but 11-4 record with a 3.11 ERA, 4.4 WAR, and 150 1/3 innings. So like to see the lefty on the mound going up against Dave Abreu for the Reds, 31-year-old. Consistent 12 or 13 game winner over the last 3 years, but a 4.65 ERA this year. Certainly looking at his performance on the field and just his pitching ratings, you would think that this is a pitching matchup that favors us. Certainly when you look at us being 13th in runs scored, 7th in runs against, Cincinnati 3rd in runs scored and 4th in runs against, is certainly a better team than us. They also won the series this year, 10-9 against us. So they are favored, but you can make an argument that we should be favored here in Game 1, and it certainly feels like a game that we are going to have to get to have any chance of taking the series against the Reds. And we do get a 7-4 victory. Street gets the win. Oh, and this is funny. Look at the home runs after the offense struggled all year. Nakahara, who had just 5 home runs and a 173 batting average after we brought the aging but wrecked physically veteran back for a second year with the Pirates, comes through with a postseason home run. Catcher Coronel, right fielder Ruacho, and shortstop / third baseman Juan Castillo also hit dingers for the Pirates. 4 runs in the second. Sean Street, 7 innings pitched, 5 hits, 3 walks, 2 earned runs. Storga made it interesting in relief, but fortunately Ricky Rios, who's back with us as the closer this year, struck out the side in the bottom of the 9th to secure the victory and to get the save for the Pirates. So we are on to Game 2. Pitching matchup there is going to be the youngster Alex Arroyo for the Pirates, and this is a pitcher who we drafted in the first round. He fell to us. We can check once the game moves on to the next day. I believe he fell to us at something like 13th, and it seemed like he was just an incredible personality to even last that long in the draft. So we were very fortunate when we got him. Yeah, he was the 13th pick in the first round back in 2041. You can see with Mr. Arroyo, he's now been up for 2 full years and parts of 2046. 9-14 record and 4.44 ERA this year, both disappointing. But you can see that he still had a 3.5 WAR, a 3.83 Sierra. 26 years old, but certainly profiles as a big-time pitcher. Gonna be glad to have him on the mound today against Willie Diaz. 29-year-old, was 8-2 after Cincinnati picked him up. Looks like he started the year in Seattle where he was 3-9. So much better with Cincinnati in terms of his ERA, his BABIP, but actually his WHIP was higher with Cincinnati, and his WAR was lower with Cincinnati, and his SIERA was much higher. So the 8-2 record was nice. Some of the secondary metrics make you think maybe he wasn't as strong. Certainly on paper, it looks like a decent pitching matchup for us here in Pittsburgh. Can we take out the division rival in 2 straight games? And we can. So Pittsburgh is on to the division series with a 6-3 win. A very bitter and disappointing end to the season for the Reds. Arturo Arellano, our center fielder, with 2 home runs today, gets the series MVP award. 6-3 win. We jumped out to a 3-0 lead, made it 5-0. They came back to close it to 5-3. We added an insurance run in the 7th. Arellano was the whole offense, 3 for 3, those 2 home runs, and drove in each of our 6 runs. Not a surprise that he ends up as the series MVP. Arroyo was brilliant, scattered 8 hits over 8 innings, no walks, 9 strikeouts, and then Rios came on for his 2nd save of the series. So good news for the Pirates. We are on to the 2nd round. Always say, just need to get into the playoffs and anything can happen. Obviously, we are going to be on the road no matter who we are facing in the playoffs, so we still have a very tough hill to climb to just get another series victory, much less get back to the World Series. But we've taken the first step, and that is positive. And in the 2nd round of the playoffs, we are getting ready to take on the New York Mets, who have often been a thorn in the side of the Pirates. Made the playoffs 9 of the last 10 years, but many of those seasons have ended in the playoffs, with the Mets celebrating either at Citi Field or in Pittsburgh. So hopefully can get a little revenge on them. Looking at the playoff tree, the Yankees beat the Angels and the White Sox beat the Guardians in the AL wildcard series. And the Padres took out the Brewers in addition to us taking out the Reds. Every series was a sweep, which is kind of interesting. So we've got the Mets. Going to be another tough matchup for us. We did take the season series 5-2 against them, but certainly on paper, with them being 4th in runs scored and us being 13th, and them being 6th in runs allowed and us being 7th, certainly the matchup favors them, at least on paper. Looking at the pitching staff, we're back to our 4-man rotation. Devin Smith, the youngster, going to be going for us today, his first full year in the majors this year. Another guy that we built around a 6th-round pick out of the University of Rhode Island back in 2045. Was a little bit older as a draftee and fell in the draft, and can see has developed into a pretty nice pitching profile, good personality, and after working in the bullpen when he first came up at the end of last year, took a spot in our rotation this year with a couple of big departures from the rotation, and more than held his own at the major league level. 12-10 record, 4.32 ERA, and 213 strikeouts and 173 innings pitched. Good for a 3.3 WAR and a very strong 289 SIERA. So feel like even though we have to go with our 3rd starter and the Mets are fully rested, Devin Smith's a guy who gives us a chance. Going against Danny Negron, 16-8 with a 4.08 ERA. He is a player that we have faced, even though he's only 27 years old, I believe multiple times in the playoffs over the year at this point. So the Mets with home field advantage and a better team than us certainly seem like they should be favored. But as I said, we did take 5 out of 7 against the Mets this year, so maybe we have their number. And we got them in game 1. 4-2 victory in 11. Rios with the win in relief. Gaylord with the save. So our top 2 relievers kind of team up there. Took a 2-0 lead. The Mets came back with 2 in the bottom of the 9th to tie it. But then we got 2 in the 11th. 2-run single from Joel Fields, the youngster. So nice to see him contributing. Devin Smith was brilliant. 2 hits, no walks, 8 strikeouts over 8 innings. Rios with the sloppy relief, but ultimately bailed out by Joel Fields. Alex Ruacho injured while running the bases. We'll find out what's going on with him. Not going to be optimal to lose one of our starting outfielders, but those are the breaks, possibly literally. The good news is that we are up 1-0 on the Mets, and we've stolen a win in New York. So that is definitely a good start to the series. Going to be interesting to find out this injury with Alex Ruacho, though. Although he is a starting outfielder, did not have an exceptional season for us. Certainly not too many of our offensive players had exceptional seasons. As you know, we were 13th in the league in runs scored. And Ruacho, as you saw from the pop-up there, out for 7 weeks with a back strain, so his season is over. As I mentioned, a starting outfielder for us, but hit just .244 with 8 homers this year. So we're going to figure out what to do to replace him, spend a little time thinking about that, and then jump back into the playoffs. And we put Ruacho onto the playoff IL. That allowed us to bring David Green onto the roster. Pretty versatile player defensively. Hit just .204 this year, though, in 196 at-bats. Can't imagine he's going to play a huge role for us, but he's a versatile player. A little bit of speed, good sacrifice bunter, leader in the clubhouse. Maybe there will be an opportunity for the 27-year-old to resuscitate his career a bit here now that he is on the playoff roster for us. Obviously a loss to miss our starting right fielder, who was also our leadoff hitter, but as we talked about, he did not have a particularly effective offensive season for us. So hopefully it's a loss that we can overcome. Xavier Rabb, our trade deadline acquisition, the lefty that we picked up from the Royals, pitched well for us. A 29-year-old ground baller who throws pretty hard, pretty proven major league starter at this point, going to be on the mound for us. Jose Diaz for the Mets, 9-11 this year with a .465 ERA. Led the league in home runs allowed for the 2nd consecutive season. He's given up an average of 40 home runs the last 2 years and just over 200 innings a season. So 2 lefties on the mound today. We'll see if we can score some runs off of Mr. Diaz. We did score 5 runs off him. Unfortunately, we needed 6. Julio Castillo and Juan Castillo, the young infielders, with the home runs for us. But Rabb gets saddled with the loss. We scored 2 in the first. They came right back and then added 4 more runs in the next 2 innings to take a 6-4 lead. We chipped at it in the 5th, 7th, and 8th, but just not enough. Rabb with a very ugly performance. 9 hits over 2 2/3 innings. 6 runs allowed, all earned. So although we got good relief from Wright and Bin Daoud while we were trying to claw back in the game, too little, too late for the Pirates. Still have to be satisfied that we got a win in New York, but obviously after winning the first game, would have hoped that we could have won the second as well, especially when it ended up being a 1-run game. But we still did what we intended to do and what we needed to do, getting 1 win in New York. So now we play the first playoff baseball of this offseason in Pittsburgh. We've got our ace, Sean Street, on the mound, going against John Marston for the Mets, 30-year-old, 12-7 with a 3.80 ERA. Certainly profiles as a pretty solid major league pitcher. This feels at home with our ace on the mound is one that we really need to get. And we did get it 10-5. Street with the W, Marston with the loss. Love to see Nakahara. He's going to end up, well, I don't want to count my chickens before they're hatched, but with 3 home runs now, there's a chance he could end up with more home runs in the postseason than he did in the regular season after hitting 2 today. Arellano also with 2, and then Fields and Julio Castillo with home runs. So a big offensive explosion for the Pirates. 4 runs in the third, 4 runs in the fifth, and then 2 in the seventh. Street was solid. 7 hits, no walks, 2 earned runs over 6 with 8 strikeouts. The lefty Arenales really tried to make it ugly for us with some poor relief. Mike Wright, another lefty, came on and stabilized things a bit for us. Got the win that we really needed to get with our ace on the mound. And now the goal is obviously to try to shock the baseball world in another series and take out the Mets here at home. Would prefer to not have to go to a deciding Game 5 in New York. We've got Alex Arroyo, the youngster, on the mound. Danny Contreras on the mound for the Mets, 32-year-old, 9-12 with a 4.14 ERA. A varied arsenal of pitches, but really the slider and the changeup are his top 2 pitches. Seems like somebody we could score some runs against. And we do get 5, but that's not enough. So we are going back to New York for Game 6. Zelaya, Coronel, and Arellano with home runs for us. Excuse me. Can see that Arroyo did get saddled with the loss. Oof. Ugly performance. 7 hits, 1 walk, 6 earned runs over 2 2/3. Got some pretty solid relief after that, but falling behind 6-0 before we'd even batted in the 3rd inning was certainly not the way that we wrote this one up. So we are headed to New York for a Game 5 against the rival Mets. Former NL East rivals back in the day, although the Pirates no longer in the National League East here in 2048, or here in 2023 for that matter. But it's been a good run for the Pirates, but obviously, you get to a deciding Game 5 in a NLDS and want to make sure to take advantage on the field of those rear opportunities in the playoffs. So we will sim ahead to Game 5 of this playoff series. Devin Smith, the rookie, on the mound, going up against Danny Negron, the veteran, who has had some big games against the Pirates in recent years in the playoffs. We did win Game 1 in extra innings when we had the same pitching matchup. Smith pitched brilliantly for us, but Negron also pitched well for the Mets. Can the Pirates get past Negron and the Mets with a rookie on the mound? Yes, we can. 3-2. And once again, Rios gets the win in the start by the youngster. But home run from Joel Fields. Let's take a look at the box score. Mets jumped out to a 1-0 lead. We tied it in the 4th, took a lead in the 7th, gave it up in the 9th. So in Game 1 and Game 5, I believe Rios gave up the lead when he came in for a save situation both times, and he was bailed out by the offense both times. Fields with another clutch hit, that solo home run to give the Pirates a lead in the 10th. And we are going to be playing the Giants or the Padres, which are also tied at 2 apiece like we were. Smith, another excellent performance for the rookie. 4 hits, 1 walk, 1 run, over 7 1/3. Rios, as I mentioned, his second blown save of the series. But fortunately, he ended up with wins in both of them. And Greg Gaylord got the save in both of those games in this series. So another upset for the Pirates, who are on to a surprising trip to the National League Championship Series. And it doesn't get any easier for these Pirates, as the Giants won Game 5 against the Padres. So the Pirates will be on the road for the first 2 games of this National League Championship Series against the best team in baseball, the only 100-win team in baseball this year, the San Francisco Giants. You can see we did split the season series. They were 9th in runs scored, so not a great offense, but still significantly better than the Pirates. And they had the best pitching staff in the National League, first in runs against. We were 7th, as we've talked about. So expecting some difficult pitching matchups. We are back on serve in a way with Sean Street able to go in Game 1. Alex Pacheco going to be on the mound for San Francisco. Looks like he may have been perhaps coming back from an injury. Made 7 starts in AAA for the 27-year-old, and then was 9-2 with a 4.31 ERA. Has some fantastic stuff, a nice 4-pitch arsenal, but can walk people and can give up the home run. We'll see what the Pirates can do. Obviously, the goal is to win a game here in San Francisco, and with our ace on the mound, would feel like this is probably the time to do it. Xavier Rabb was horrible in that first playoff start for us last series, so would feel a lot better if we get the win today against the Giants. Not to be the case, though. Oof, a 13-9 game, so no good pitching at all. Coleman, for us, got the loss in relief. The youngster did get home runs from Danny Calez and Arturo Arellano, but for the best pitching staff in baseball with the Giants, and a pitching staff, although in our case that was kind of average this year, but has over the last decade often been one of the top pitching staffs in the National League. 13-9 game is not what you expect. Giants scored all of their runs in 2 innings with some big crooked numbers, 6 in the 4th, 7 in the 6th. So just an ugly performance pitching-wise for us. Street, 11 hits over 3 2/3 innings, 6 earned runs. Bin Daoud, not great. Robles, not great. Chris Colvin, awful. Didn't get a batter out, gave up 3 hits, 2 walks, 5 runs, all of them earned. Ended up getting saddled with the loss. Danny Calez somehow was player of the game with his 3-for-4 performance with 3 runs scored, a couple ribbies in the home run that we talked about. But after jumping out to a 7-0 lead, certainly a bitter loss for the Pirates here in Game 1. Didn't get a great pitching performance from Street, but we were still set up to win, and definitely let this one get away from us. As I mentioned, Rabb was awful. 20.25 ERA and the loss in that one playoff start he had for us. Going up against Tony Diaz, 11-9 with a National League best 2.59 ERA. We'll see what happens. The Pirates do get the W, so we got the win, not the way we wrote it up, but Rabb bounced back, 6-2 victory. Home runs from Lupe Zelaya and Julio Castillo. Save from Rios, hopefully at least a clean save from him again. Took a 3-2 lead into the 9th, scored 3 runs in the top of the 9th to get to the 6-2 final margin. Castillo, to use an old statistic, with the game-winning RBI with a solo home run to put us up 3-2. Rab definitely bounced back from that poor performance, scattered 8 hits over 7 1/3, walked 1, struck out 6. Rios with an inning and 2/3 of perfect ball to pick up his third save of the playoffs. So we got a win in San Francisco, and that was what we felt like we needed to do. So we are headed back home, tied 1-1, kind of where we want to be. Alex Arroyo coming off of a rough outing against the Mets, his last time out on the mound for us. Tony Lira, 33-year-old, 15-8 with a 3.12 ERA, struck out 189 batters, 294 SIERA. So a really nice season from the veteran for the Giants. Certainly profiles as an above-average major league pitcher, extreme ground baller, throws in the mid to high 90s. So this should be a good pitching matchup between Lira and Arroyo. And it was a good pitching matchup, but it worked out for Pittsburgh. 3-1 victory. Arroyo got the win. Lira saddled with the loss. Rios with another save. Got a home run from the veteran. He's listed as a third baseman now, but we've been starting him at shortstop because of his glove in the playoffs. And got a home run from Luis Linares. San Francisco went up 1-0 on us in the first. We scored 3 runs in the fifth. Linares with a 2-run homer to put us in front. So Arroyo was solid. 1 earned run over 6 innings, 5 hits, 5 walks. Not the control that we would hope, but he did enough. Holds from Robles and Astorga. And then Rios did give up a hit in the 9th, but got his 4th save of the playoffs. And we've got a 2-1 lead 3 games in. Getting ahead of myself, maybe being hopeful, saying we've got a 3-1 lead. We will find out tomorrow whether or not that is actually going to happen. But it has certainly been a better run through the playoffs than we would have expected as a 85-win team that certainly was not a definite to make the playoffs until the final week of the season. But that being said, excuse me, at this point we are up 2-1, and if you're up 2-1 and you've got 2 games in a row at home in the National League Championship Series, you're kind of in a position where you feel like you want to close this thing out at home. Devin Smith, the rookie, who has been excellent in the playoffs, no decisions, but a 0.59 ERA, going up against Edgar Lara, 31-year-old, was 9-7 with a 4.33 ERA. Stuff is not all that great, but good movement, good control, high intelligence, very bright. Only throws in the low 90s, so he is a crafty right-hander who just somehow gets people out with his guile, it looks like. Hopefully we'll do a little better with the brilliant youngster on the mound today. And we do get a win. But Danny Calez, and that is going to be a painful loss. Before we check that out, let's look at this. 7-2 win. Devin Smith finally gets a W in the playoffs. Another big hit from Joel Fields with a home run. San Francisco jumped out to a 1-0 lead, but we came back with 4 in the 4th, 2 in the 5th, and 1 in the 6th to really, can never say put the game out of reach, but to give ourselves a pretty big lead. 2 runs driven in from both Zelaya, Fields, and Linares. Smith, 1 hit, 1 earned run, which was not earned over 6 innings. Arenales and Rios on in relief. Danny Calez, though, with that injury while running the bases, out with an intercostal strain for 2 to 3 weeks. He had a bit of a down year as far as the power this year. I guess maybe not. It was. He got the batting average up to 270 from 250, but his home run production dipped from 25 and 336 at-bats last year to just 17 and 470 at-bats this year. But still, certainly, with a 119 OPS plus, 116 WRC plus, is one of our more effective offensive players. And now with the loss of our starting left fielder, in addition to our starting right fielder, the offense for the Pirates, which was challenged to begin with, is going to remain an issue. But we are up 3-1 in the NLCS, so nobody wants to hear our complaints and our moaning. And we've added Calez to the IL. Kind of getting thin with major league quality players that we can bring up here for the rest of the NLCS. May remember that Alex Perkins is a guy who was once a real promising outfielder in our system. We ended up moving on from him, but picked him up as a minor leaguer this year. He did end up spending a little time on the major league roster. You can see played 66 games actually, largely when Nakahara was hurt, but hit just .235 with 5 home runs. Although he's a former Rookie of the Year and a former guy who we thought was going to be a cornerstone of the Pirates playthrough for a while, we're going to actually bring up the youngster Jerry Drake, a little more versatile defensively, although he is really not that good in the infield. In the outfield, he's more respectable defensively, and a little bit more of a contact hitter, certainly a lot more of a contact hitter than Perkins at this point. Hit .325 down in AAA, was 0 for 8 in his very brief cup of coffee with us, but feel like he gives us a little more versatility. Again, he's listed as a third baseman at this point in his career, but is ideally not someone that we're going to be playing at third base. In fact, just to be careful, I mean, we obviously control the rosters, but we're going to move his position to left field just so there's no confusion with our manager on how we would intend to use him. Don't think he's going to go into the starting lineup. We're going to have to play around with that right now, but you can see with the loss of Calez, who was our number 2 hitter against righties and our number 6 hitter against lefties, with him and our former leadoff hitter Alex Ruacho both now out for the playoffs, we're definitely missing some key contributors. We'll see whether we can keep this thing together on duct tape and bubble gum, though, as we try to win one more game to get back to the World Series. And with now the injury to Calez in addition to Ruacho, Jaden Godfrey is going to be in the lineup against righties. The youngster was already in the lineup against lefties after the first injury to Ruacho. He's going to be playing right field against right-handers now. And the left-handed hitting Nakahara, who had that brutal regular season but has been more productive in the playoffs. We had not been playing him against left-handed pitching, but with the injury, he still is a guy who's got decent power, even against lefties. He's wrecked, but we're obviously going to have a lot of days off in the playoffs. Nakahara is going to be getting some extra playing time with those injuries, so we'll see if we can piece this thing together. Just need one more win to get back to the World Series for the second straight year. With Sean Street, our ace, on the mound, let's hope we can get it done today. Pacheco on the mound for San Francisco, a rematch from that wild offensive game in Game 1, which was the only game that we lost in this series. And another rough performance for Street. We lose 7-3. So being up 3-2 after having 3 games at home is kind of where we are expected to be if we're holding serve. The issue is now we've got to break serve, to use that tennis analogy, on the road in one of these last 2 games where the 100-win Giants will be favored. Street with an ugly performance, 6 hits, 2 walks, 6 earned runs over 2 1/3. Didn't really matter after that. couple runs driven in from Fields. Nakahara 0 for 2, but did score a run and walk. He's actually hitting just 185 in the playoffs, so only hitting a little better batting average-wise, but does have 3 home runs in the playoffs after just 5 during the entire regular season when he had 3 stints on the injured list. So we're really hoping to get that one at home, especially with the injuries to our outfielders. Feel like we're taking a big risk going back to San Francisco at this point, and also, starting to think ahead, which probably isn't the right way to do it. Would have loved to have a little bit of extra potential time off before a potential World Series matchup. So I may have no game today. But it was not to be the case, so we are back in San Francisco. Xavier Rabb, who has had a horrible start and a very good start for us in the playoffs, on the mound up against Tony Diaz. Rematch of Game 1 when Rabb outpitched Diaz on the way to a Pittsburgh victory. That was the one game that we did win in San Francisco. Can we win 2 in a row in San Francisco with that pitching matchup? Yes, we can. So the Pirates are shockingly headed back to the World Series, 2nd year in a row. Last year when we had 100 wins, it was not a surprise that we made it there, even though we ended up losing. This year we're heading back as a big underdog. Got another home run from Nakahara, so he now has 4 in the playoffs after only 5 in the regular season. Juan Castillo with a home run also, 12-3 victory. Taking a look at the box score, we jumped on them early and often, 2 runs in the first, 2 in the second, 3 in the fourth to take a 7-0 lead. Ended up winning 12-3. Red Sox and the White Sox are tied 3 apiece. If you've been watching the series, you know that the Red Sox were the team that beat us in the World Series last year, so could be a potential World Series rematch. It's the 15th today. Series doesn't start till the 18th, so we will get a few days of rest to hopefully have a pitching staff that is in as good shape as possible. We're at a point where we're really reliant on the pitching, with the fact that our offense wasn't that good at all this season to begin with, and we've lost couple starting players over the last 2 rounds of the playoffs. 4 ribbies from Castillo today, 2 ribby game from Godfrey, 2 ribbies from Nakahara, 2 ribbies from Fields. Rabb scattered 9 hits and walked 2 over 6 1/3, but only allowed 2 runs to score. So it was a good series for the Pirates, obviously. Struggled to make it into the playoffs this year. Thought about throwing in the towel as we were approaching the trade deadline, but decided against it. And we are now 4 wins away. I'm sure that we are going to be an underdog no matter who we end up playing in the World Series. Red Sox were a 96-win team. Actually, the White Sox an 87-win team, so still better than us, but that would be a much closer matchup. Looks like they were also the final wild card, and looks like they had to play a game against the Astros to decide that final wild card spot. So if the White Sox are able to upend the Red Sox in Game 7, that's going to mean that the 2 6th seeds would be missing in the World Series. So we'll find out shortly what the situation is. And we have a rematch of the 2047 World Series here in 2048, with the Pittsburgh Pirates facing off against the Boston Red Sox, who took the World Series from us in 6 games last season. You can see we split 4 games this year between the 2 teams. Similar pitching staffs, both solid. Red Sox were 6th in the AL in runs against. Pirates, as we've talked about, were 7th. The offenses are the big difference. We were one of the worst offenses in the National League with 698 runs scored. The Red Sox were the best offense in the American League with 893 runs scored. So particularly with two starting outfielders out for the Pirates, going to be interesting to figure out how we are going to score some runs here in the World Series. But last year we were a 100-win team. We had home field advantage, and the Red Sox beat us. Maybe we can turn the tables on them this year. They've got home field advantage. They were 11 games better than us at 96 and 66. But maybe these Pirates are a team of destiny. Our owner, longtime owner Bob Nutting, did pass away earlier this season. His son has taken over, and his personality as someone to work for is actually even more difficult than his father's was. But maybe we have a bit of a Major League, the movie, Cleveland Indians situation, where if the Pirates aren't inspired by the death of the senior Mr. Nutting, maybe they are united in their apathy towards current ownership, and that perhaps will drive us to a title. We'll find out. Sean Street, our ace, back on the mound, has had some mixed results in the playoffs. Alex Mills supposedly going to start, although he's day-to-day with a strained ab that does have a minimal impact on his throwing. I wonder whether the Red Sox will really end up starting him. 19-3 record, 2.25 ERA. Led the American League in wins, ERA, strikeouts per 9 innings with 317, 16.6 strikeouts per 9, 55 FIP, 6.6 WAR. You can see his stuff is off the charts with a exceptional fastball and changeup and an excellent splitter. The 24-year-old was picked late in the first round back in 2045. Just a brilliant young pitcher. So maybe the injury impacts him a little bit. Certainly a tough matchup against what will likely be a crazed crowd in Fenway here for Game 1. And same as with the Giants, same as with the Mets and the NLDS, the goal for Pittsburgh is to get a game here in Boston. Would love to do it today, but if we go back to Pittsburgh, tied 1-1, we've done our job. 4-3 loss, so that's tough. Looks like Juan Bin Daoud, the loser in relief, did get a homer from Lupe Zelaya. Seems like one that we could have had a shot at. They took a 2-0 lead. We came back with 3 in the 4th. They tied us, and then got a run in the 7th off of Bin Daoud to saddle him with the loss. Street was okay. 3 earned runs over 5 innings. Bin Daoud was not great. 3 hits and 2 walks over 2 innings. Fortunately, just the 1 earned run, but it ended up being the run that cost us. Mills was injured while pitching. He only went a third of an inning, so I'm guessing, yeah, he's out now. So that is a hit to the Red Sox, but the fact that they were able to get the W in a game that he only went a third of an inning is something that could end up costing the Pirates here in the World Series. Again, if we bounce back in Game 2 and get the W under Alex Arroyo with him on the mound, then we've done our job. But certainly when starting pitcher only gets 1 out, you would hope that you could win that game. Arroyo, some real good performances and 1 real bad performance for us in the playoffs. Cesar Soto, 33-year-old, who went 13-8 with a 2.88 ERA on the mound for the Red Sox. Really nothing to say. Kind of have to get a W here. We'll see what happens. and we do not get the W. So once again, Boston is causing nightmares for the Pirates. Beat us 10-2 to take a 2-0 lead. Did get a homer from Juan Castillo, but Arroyo. Actually, they got us late. We had a 2-0 lead. They came back and took the lead, and then run in the fifth, 2 in the sixth, 2 in the seventh, and 5 in the eighth. So Arroyo was fine. Quality start with just 1 earned run, 3 total over 6 innings. Bobby Astorga with a brutal relief performance for the middle reliever. 7 hits, 2 walks, 7 earned runs, got just 3 outs. Another injury for them to their starter, Cesar Soto, pending injury there. So they could be struggling to put a pitching staff together by the time we get to Pittsburgh. We've got that going for us. The issue is we've set ourselves up in this series where we now need to win 4 out of 5 games against a 96-win team that beat us in the World Series last year and was a much better team than us this year. So the injuries seem to be perhaps moving in our favor. But the injuries don't necessarily mean wins and losses on the field. And we are at a point where heading home down 2-0, time to start getting some wins on the field. And I guess we've got the pitcher that we want to have on the mound with the rookie Devin Smith. 12-10 in the regular season, but 1-0 in 3 starts, but a 0.42 ERA. So he has been exceptional in the playoffs. John Westfield on the mound for the Red Sox, 17-10, 4.43 ERA. 29-year-old, looks like a solid veteran pitcher. Ground baller who throws in the high 90s. Certainly not going to be an easy matchup for the Pirates, but not technically a must-win, but certainly feels like a must-win. And we do get it 4-3. Gaylord with the win in relief, Rios with the save, Nakahara with his 5th home run of the playoffs. So he is now, although his batting average is not great in the playoffs, he has now hit as many home runs in the playoffs as he did in the regular season. We jumped out to a 3-0 lead, let the Red Sox chip back with runs in the 4th, 5th, and 6th to tie it. And then we got a run in the 8th. Lupe Zelaya, the slugging first baseman, with a run-scoring single to deliver the victory. Also got 3 ribbies from Nakahara. Looks like that was three-run homer there in the 2nd to give us the lead. Smith actually was not great this time out. 5 hits, 3 walks over 4 2/3. His ERA is up to a sickly 1.04 in the playoffs. Went back to Astorga, whose ERA is actually a really sickly 15.19. Gaylord, former closer, 2-time NL reliever of the year with the win in relief, and Rios with his 5th save of the playoffs for us. So we got to keep stringing wins together. Feels great to have the victory, but quite honestly, we still got to win 3 out of 4. So we're still in a very challenging situation. So as we start thinking about Game 4 tomorrow, it looks like Cesar Soto, I was going to say his injury was not that serious, but still diagnosis pending. I just saw him listed as the potential starter for Game 6 and thought he would be healthy. But kind of feel that with the fact that they may have lost their starters from the first 2 games of the series, that if we can get Game 4 tomorrow in Pittsburgh and get this back to 2-2, still only have 1 home game left. The home field advantage still would favor Boston, but the pitching matchups may begin to turn our way. But obviously we need to get a win today, now tomorrow, or tomorrow, now today, here in Game 4. Xavier Rabb, the trade deadline acquisition on the mound for us. Jorge Verdugo, 26-year-old, 12-13 with a 5.60 ERA. So not great stats from him this year. Certainly profiles as a solid major league pitcher. This is a huge one for us. Like I said, we're up against it one way or another, still needing to win 3 of the last 4. But I feel if we win this one, the momentum is certainly swinging our way, and the pitching matchups in terms of injuries could start swinging our way. But we've got to swing the bats well and hopefully score some runs here for that to matter. And it doesn't. Boston with a 6-4 win, so they are now 1 win away from beating us in the World Series 2 consecutive years. Verdugo with the win, Rab with the loss. We did get a homer from Arellano. We took a 3-0 lead at home, gave up 5 in the 5th. Rab, 5 earned runs over 4 1/3 innings. You can see a bunch of relievers, with the exception of Gaylord, didn't allow any runs after that. But I really felt like if we had won that game 4, the series was going to start swinging our way. Doesn't mean that it's over. We've just got to win 3 in a row at this point. We're in a really tough situation, but it does look like Soto is now out. So with the fact that they've lost their game 1 and game 2 starters, I would think the pitching matchups are going to favor us a little bit in these final games of the series. The goal is just to ensure that there's 3 more games in this series, which certainly isn't going to be easy when our backs are up against the wall, and any loss is the last game of the season for us. Sean Street, 2-1 record in the playoffs, but a 7.12 ERA at this point for our ace. Going against Alvaro Partida, 10-10 record with a 5.05 ERA. Looks like he was probably the 5th starter for the Red Sox this year, pushed into potentially being a pitcher who can clinch the World Series for them on the road. Obviously, must-win game for Pittsburgh at this point. And we did not win it. A 1-0 loss. So we're came up short again, losing in the World Series to the Red Sox for a 2nd consecutive season. They beat us 4-2 last year, beat us 4-1 this year. Was a fantastic run in the playoffs by the Pirates, but couldn't get the job done. Partida was obviously excellent as they pushed their 5th starter into duty. They got a run on us in the 4th, solo home run from Bobby Brito, World Series MVP off of Sean Street. Street, good performance, really good performance. 3 hits, 2 walks, 1 earned run over 7 innings. Gaylord and Rios combined for 2 innings of scoreless relief. But Partida did the job, 2 hits over 5 2/3. Rubio with an inning and a 1/3 of scoreless relief. And then David White on with 2 innings pitched to get the save. So the season is over for the Pirates. Once again, we are not World Series champions. 11 seasons in the books now as general manager of the Pirates. 9 playoff appearances. Those are the positive things. 9 out of 11 years with the Pirates in the playoffs, including 8 in a row, is the best postseason activity stretch in the history of the Pirates franchise. The negative is in those 11 years and those 9 playoff appearances, we have no World Series championships. 0-2 in the World Series with the losses to Red Sox last season and this season. So was a really fun run through the playoffs this year for the Pirates. Thought maybe we had a little bit of magic and we're going to get this team finally across the finish line. But it was not to be the case. So in our next episode, we will recap the season, start getting ready for the off season, and it may be time to make some decisions about our future. Do we really want to deal with the not just penny pinching Robert Nutting Jr., but the fact that he's also meddling and demanding at this point in our career. We are a legend in the game. 20 playoff appearances in 27 seasons as general manager, those 5 championships with the Royals. Do we want to keep coming back with this Pittsburgh team? Or do we decide to move on to a new challenge? And it does feel empty if we move on from Pittsburgh with no championships in 11 years. That was absolutely our goal. But have some decisions to make in the coming off season about our future and our career. You can see we are mythically 51 years old at this point in 2048. So we became a general manager at the age of 24. Very impressive. But we may have one last run in us. Do we want to continue doing it in Pittsburgh, or do we want to go somewhere else? We'll know more after we do the season recap and after we kind of have a conversation with ownership on how we did this year. And we will find out the results of that conversation in our next episode. Until then, thanks so much for watching and hope you have a great day.